Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Niger wife, Vimbai Muchihiri Ekpenyong. Good morning.
Good morning, Doctor. So today you decided to play safe. No hour, no day, just Niger wife.
The lack of use of an
No, before other people will start claiming you.
I would like to, for empirical purposes, repeat. Our Niger wife.
No way you're concerned, you know. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning,
I hope he sends you upkeep because it's not just by hour. You know, there's responsibility.
Rufai. Rufai is a very capable and responsible uncle.
Shake body.
He always sends something for his niece and nephew. Always sends something. Please, on school fees we are paid, so contribution.
It's for school fees or uncle.
Our wife.
Do your part.
Our children.
When I get a lot.
On that note, guys, get off your mic. Let's get straight into it. Let's share some of the top international stories. Today, we're really going to go around the world. We begin with Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un, who will attend a military parade in Beijing, marking the first public appearance of the two leaders alongside President Xi Jinping in a show of collective defiance amid Western pressure. So no Western leaders will be among the 26 foreign heads of state and government attending the parade next week, with the exception of Robert Fico, Prime Minister of Slovakia, a European Union member state, according to the Chinese Foreign Ministry on Thursday. So against a backdrop of China's growing military might during the Victory Day parade on September 3rd, the three leaders will project what they think will be a major show of solidarity, not just between China and the global south, but also with sanctions hit Russia and controversial North Korea. Now to Africa and Europe relations, as Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye arrived at the Élysée Palace in Paris on Wednesday, where he was welcomed by his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron. The talks over breakfast at the presidential palace came just weeks after France closed its last military bases in Senegal. Now, that brought an end to more than 6 decades of permanent presence in the country by the former colonial ruler and follows similar withdrawals across the region. But this week's meeting was about resetting relations between the two countries, with historical wounds, economic tensions, and new partnerships on top of the agenda. Faye wants Paris to apologize for colonial atrocities, including the 1944 massacre by French troops of Senegalese soldiers who had fought for the Allies in World War II. At the same time, both governments want to highlight common goals in sustainable development, education, and healthcare. It'll be interesting to see the reaction from the region, the West African region specifically, because we know that the relationship with France has been a major bone of contention in recent times. We close in South America, where Mexico's Senate erupted into violence on Wednesday with punches, pushing and shouting after an opposition party leader grabbed the chamber's president as the session was wrapping up. Alejandro Alito Moreno, head of the opposition Institutional Revolutionary Party, PRI, came at Senate President Gerardo Fernandez Noronha of the ruling Morena party as lawmakers were singing the national anthem to mark the end of the day's hearing. The fight broke out after a difficult debate about the presence of armed forces from other countries in Mexico. This is according to Fernandez Noronha, who later spoke at a press conference. Now, in the live-streamed video, Moreno could be seen coming up to Fernandez Noronha, repeatedly saying, "I'm asking you to let me speak," grabbing Fernandez Noronha by the arm. Noronha said he would call an emergency session for Friday and would propose expelling Moreno and 3 other PRI lawmakers for the fight. I thought this was an important story to highlight because we have had some moments of rancor in our own Senate. Thank God, never to this extent. I think it's only Italian Parliament where we see them, and sometimes Japanese where we see them coming to blows. But
when you got it wrong, go to the South African Parliament.
And South Africa, of course,
or
yes.
go to the Portuguese Parliament.
Portuguese, exactly.
They famously, but I mean...
But they few slaps they exchanged in our
even our own Parliament back in the days it was not our national parliament, but it was a state parliament when they carried the mace and used to hit somebody's head. We remember that person that did it. We don't want to mention his name today. We know. So people always have tiff back and forth, but I think the substance of the argument is it should not degenerate into what it is. I think disciplinary measures must be meted out. I want to talk about France today. and Jumai. And part of the things Jumai is asking for, and it's very critical, Turaye massacre is something we'll never forget, because these were African troops that fought for France in the war. They were arrested by German Allied forces. About 1,000 of them were killed, those of West African and North African origin. Those that survived the killing from the German forces, there are pictures of them in places like Dijon where they were arrested. They were repatriated back to Africa, put in a camp of Turaye, and they were not paid their wages. Just imagine you go to fight, you were not paid your wages, you were arrested for so many years, you were in incarceration, and the little money you were supposed to pay, they didn't pay you. And you demanded the money, and they came and they killed. And you know how the French did it? They did it with a gendarmerie squad led by fellow Africans in typical colonial style. And guess what? Over the years, France tried shielding it. In fact, documentaries and novels were written about it. They would censor those novels and documentaries. Lope Sedar Senghor wrote a poem about Turaye, and they would try to censor it. In fact, based on the atrocities of France in Africa, writers like Mungo Betty, that wrote the book Mission Terminée or Mission Tukala, that wrote the book about France, French occupation of Africa. The likes of Foucault, that started the recolonization of France after most of the country going independence, which Foucault was a prominent businessman, but was very close to any president of France, was like the African advisor, helped recolonize most African countries with business interests. They would censor the books of the likes of Mungo Betty. And these are the things France have done. Last year, Macron, for the first time, a French leader, accepted that Turaye happened. And now, Jumai is saying they need an apology, which is only a rights process. Then after the apology, we must now ask for restitution. Just like Jumai, he said it, in fact, I think it was Sonko that said it before, that they want to exit the CFA. Another form of colonialism is the CFA that is pegged to the French currency. So these are part of the demands he's going to take to them. If it's going to be successful, we do not know. But at least we started the first phase when last year Macron accepted that what's it called happened. Secondly, there's a coalition of anti-Western forces that are beginning to build. You have the likes of FICO, which is right, and look at one thing in common: right wing. FICO was right wing of Slovenia. Kim Jong-un, and that he's supporting Russia. He's got over 10,000 North Korean troops out there. All of them are meeting in Beijing.
You also have the Serbian president.
They also have the Serbian president. So it shows that there's a coalition of forces. I mean, America definitely will react to it because it tries to undermine their authority and integrity, but it's just the way of the world. I mean, it's the imbalance that is going on in the world. If you read things about, the Peloponnesian Wars, and Thucydides wrote a lot about this, and the Thucydides trap happening, there's a divergence in the world. The East is trying to fight the West for dominance.
That struggle for hegemony.
Yeah, that struggle for hegemony.
So there's a boxer in Mexico called Moreno as well. Let's not be confused with the inspiration. Maybe it's the name that is, that is working. But I just very quick comment on that one, which is a display of a total disrespect, not just for one another, but even for the institution and the country, because this happened whilst the anthem was being sung, marking the close of their session. And I thought, a number of reactions, the decadence, it's a reflection, or perhaps it's a reflection of the political situation in Mexico, a reflection of the kind of leaders that are currently there, a reflection of the rot in the system, as it were, where it lack of respect, even the fact that they were being live streamed and watched by many people across the world was not a deterrent for this show of shame. It has been called, there might be a session tomorrow to discuss this and see what the punishment would be. There are accusations and counter-accusations as to who threw the first blow, who was the first agitator. One person said, the leader of the Senate, president of the Senate, said Moreno threatened him that he was going to beat him up, was going to kill him, even used the word, I'm going to kill you. Strong words there on the floor of the Senate. But remember, one of the reason behind this was because Moreno accuses the president of the Senate for not allowing him to speak up. Does that sound familiar to you?
That's why I brought the story.
But, you know, the good thing about it is that, and I think this is where we're not the uncivilized party in this manner. The way it was handled is at least there were no punches thrown in Senate. So we see that even in parts of the world where their voices are silenced, it's provocative enough for them to get into physical fights. Here in Nigeria, she was vilified for just asserting her rights and saying that she had the right to speak, and, you know, should be recognized by the Senate President and speak. By the way, what's happening with that matter in terms of her returning? That Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, by the way. But just to say that it happens in different places, and a senator would employ different means to ensure that his voice is being heard on the floor of the Senate. Then going very quickly to France. Yes, France, Macron accepted last year. But do you recall the meeting earlier this year in January where he said that countries in the Sahel region and some parts of West Africa should be grateful, or that they were ingrates because they did not acknowledge France's position in securitizing their, you know, in the security of their nations. This seems like a U-turn from that, and I want to say that this is a show of what happens when countries, especially on the African continent, take their stance and are proud of who they are and don't go cap in hand begging to this country. Now they've gone to President Faye of Senegal has gone to France, and they're able to have conversations around that. Finally, on this topic, I think the reason why France might not want to, you know, speak about some of the resetting of the ties and compensations is that a lot of the Western nations have moved away for the fear of reparations and the payment of reparations and the like. But let's see how this meeting will pan out, and hopefully we'll have a conversation about it.
Okay, there is a body called the International Parliamentary Union. The International Parliamentary Union is the body of parliamentarians, umbrella body all over the world. And it has a common framework for the ethical conduct of parliamentarians. What does that common framework say? It says that parliamentarians are expected to lead by example. They are supposed to put the common interest of the people that they serve above partisan or personal interests, and that in the conduct of their affairs as parliamentarians, they should act like gentlemen. Therefore, if you find any parliament, whether in Nigeria or in Portugal or in Italy or elsewhere, where they are throwing vehicle punches or throwing chairs or throwing the mace, you know, that's clearly a derogation from the principle of the idea of this umbrella body called the International Parliamentary Union. Now, what happened in Mexico in the upper chamber, you know, fits into this kind of reckless behavior among parliamentarians. Number one, I do not think it's going to end because Moreno, the Senate president, says he's now going to call an emergency meeting whereby members of the PIR, the Inter-Revolutionary Party, will be expelled, 4 of them, including Moreno, popularly known as Alito, who was involved in that scuffle. If that happens, maybe we will see another fight. But however, the thing to note is that the PR used to dominate the parliament until 2024, when this new party, Morena, you know, put in place by, what's his name now? President Labrador, I think that's...
Okay, Labrador.
Obrador, yeah, whatever the pronunciation. You know, and that party took over parliament. And you have Claudia Sheinbaum as the current president. So this is part of age-old rivalry between a party that used to be the majority that is now a minority, weak opposition in parliament. And the whole issue is about the presence of foreign forces on Mexican soil, which they said they were not allowed to contribute to. Now, the second issue, Kim Jong-un and Putin identify with Xi Jinping on, Victory Day on September 3. September 3 Victory Day was when the Japanese forces decided to surrender to the Chinese forces. And since then, China has been building up its military strategies to say that it will no longer, be at the mercy of any other country. World War II, 1944, ended, of course, with the attack on Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the Allied Air Forces. So this is in celebration of that. But there's something called symbolism, signaling in diplomacy. And South Korea's rocket man, Little Man, joining Putin, the brutal dictator of Russia, and appearing with Xi Jinping, it's a symbolic statement to the rest of the world, that, or to the West specifically, that they are together. And these three countries taken together are allies. And these are countries that are considered rogue countries by the West. The ICC has been looking for Putin, but in 2024, he visited China freely. The United Nations has placed sanctions on North Korea since 2006, but here he wants to appear on the same stage with persons, countries that have been classified by the allies as being in the axis of evil. Iran is also going to be at that event.
Yes.
Serbia will be there. Indonesia will be there. Finally, France is to be seen within the context of the dwindling influence of France in Africa, particularly in West Africa. In 2022, Mali ordered France out of its territory in terms of its paternalistic presence, creating security. In 2023, Niger ordered France out of its territory. In 2024, when President Faye, who is now visiting France, became president, he said that France should leave. And last week, they closed down Camp Gouel, which is the last major military base of France in Senegal. So this is the context of it, either from Central African Republic or to Mali or to Burkina Faso or to Niger or to Chad. So what you have is shifting alliances.
Yes.
These former Francophone countries are moving towards Russia.
Yes,
they are moving towards the Wagner brothers. They are moving to Wagner Group. They are moving towards China. But Senegal says there can be a reset. But that reset is double-edged.
Yes, it is.
They are asking for apology. They are asking for payment of 150 million euros with regard to the Dakar Expressway.
Yes.
They are asking for proper acknowledgement of the killing of African soldiers that fought on the side of France in World War II. But how they do the resetting, we'll see.
We'll wait to see.
So this is what is happening between Senegal and France. And by extension, the other countries in the Sahelian region and the Francophone countries in Africa.
In Africa, absolutely. Well, this is what happens when I bring so many juicy topics to the World Brief. Let's now go to the newspapers quickly. We kick off, as always, with This Day newspaper, which leads with Bala Mohammed's declaration that he gave up his presidential bid to allow PDP zone the ticket to the south. Of course, that has already been analyzed in detail. The story also highlights Abba Moro's comments that giving Atiku the ticket in 2023 was a mistake, while Samuel Otom appears to be sitting on the fence by giving conditionality to his support for a southern PDP ticket. But another big story is the takeaway from the just-ended state visit to Brazil by President Tinubu as he banks on tech, food security to boost Nigeria's economic growth after witnessing the development in Brazil. Absolutely loved all the comments on that this morning. I know Dr. Bati specifically spoke about lessons to learn from Brazil. I thought it was also important for us to learn from what Brazil got wrong, because it's one of the most unequal societies in the world at the moment. And how did they get there? External debt crippled them to the point that in the 80s they had almost over 2,000% inflation. So let's learn from debt. How did they get out of it? They privatized a lot of the state-owned enterprises. Just to throw in there. Now, there's Above the Masthead focuses on ASU, which is carried over to Daily Trust, and of course most of the newspapers today. An interministerial committee is set to meet today to harmonize the various reports that have been drafted over the years to resolve the recurring challenges with ASU. We've spoken about that at length as well. Now to Punch, which of course also looks at ASU, but at the top is the report that former President Goodluck Jonathan is demanding a credible INEC chair and is decrying defections. The former president has called for urgent reforms in the electoral system. Politics also leads on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, which reports that PDP is intensifying its moves to woo Goodluck Jonathan. Vanguard, also looks at the SBM intelligence report that says, 762 Nigerians have been killed, 4,722 abductions have taken place, and that 2.6 billion naira has been raked in via ransom to kidnappers in 1 year. Finally, on Nigerian papers, The Guardian gives a look into how the telecom tariff hikes have cut off 2.4 million people from the internet amid soaring data consumption. We'll look at two international papers. Ghana's Daily Graphic platforms the declaration by Ghanaian President Mahama that he has no intention of becoming a sit-tight leader. He says, "I will not contest 2028 election." His focus is on fiscal discipline. And we closed with a gruesome story on the front page of the Washington Post, which leads with the shooting at the Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis during a school mass. And so far, 2 children have died. Horrible, horrible tragedy.
Really tragic.
Well, thank you very much, Vimba.